But what I want to talk about today is the internet demands video games always have a deep meaning or be politically charged and motivated, be socially conscious and socially aware of everything that's going on, and I think that's really detrimental to video games as a whole. It's no longer enough for a video game to just be fun. In fact, I'd argue to the internet, fun is secondary to the meaning and the political message behind the game. I think politics is very unenjoyable as a topic. I don't get political. I never get political. I think it's a very boring world. There's no entertainment to be had.
The honor should be yours. As long as you live, the heart of this army can never be broken.
So get your politics out of my video games. The rallying cry of a generation of reactionaries on the internet from about, I guess, 2014, and it's still going on today. Basically, people have made whole careers on YouTube just pointing out politics and leftist infiltration of video games. And they talk about, how they just don't want anything to be political. They want games as an escape. And, whoever puts their politics in it, left or right, although in their eyes it's mainly the left, they just want that to be taken out because remember when games used to be fun, remember when games used to be for everyone. But lately with the new Call of Duty trailers, I think it's pretty evident to everyone that reactionaries, anti-SJWs and the right wing and just general conservatives don't actually hate politics in video games. In fact, they love politics in video games, and this is evident from their reaction to Yuri, Bezmenov and Ronald Reagan featuring in the new Call of Duty. So I guess this video will serve as a conclusion to the stuff that's been going up on my channel lately of all these really right-wing conspiracy theorist narratives becoming part of the marketing campaigns for new AAA games or games made by AAA studios, how conservatives have eaten this up, and why it shows that they're such hypocrites because they see representation of minorities as politics, but actually putting super controversial conservative political figures into games is totally fine, and anyone who has a problem with that is trying to put their own politics into this video game. Before we get any further, if you want to support my work, please like this video, maybe subscribe to the channel, check out my Patreon in the description, check out my social medias, and maybe also check out my new podcast on Spotify. And the first episode is me talking about being raised as a Catholic in Catholic school and eventually my journey to growing out of that religion. So I'm going to be focusing on two big boys, Sargon of Akkad and the Quarter Pounder, both giving their own reaction to the separate trailers. A lot of you may have seen my video talking about the Yuri Bezmenov teaser trailer, talking about who this guy actually was and all the racist and totally insane stuff this guy spoke about, obviously spreading the cultural Marxism conspiracy theory, which in itself is anti-Semitic, and also how he may have just said these things to get a cushy home in America, because a lot of what he was saying was just really playing to the far-right Christian crowd, which had really brought the Ronald Reagan era into American politics. But yeah, Call of Duty spreads cultural Marxism. That is very, very political. And remember, right-wingers, reactionaries, anti-SJWs absolutely hate politics of any form. It's just the game, bro. We just want to have fun. We just want to turn off from the real world. Well, Sargon of Akkad seems to very much like putting such a controversial political figure in the game. So here is his reaction when the trailer came out.
A new Call of Duty trailer has been released, and this is not normally breaking news as I would present it on this channel because I don't care about Call of Duty. It's just not my kind of game. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just not for me. But this, as you can see, is not just any Call of Duty trailer. This one is called Know Your History and features a short, bold, but clever chap called Yuri Bezmenov. And he then wrote books and gave many lectures and featured on TV about what the Soviets do in order to expand Soviet influence, how they create their kind of ideological empire across the world. And it's very different to the way that the Americans do it. He explained that they do it by a process which is called, and all of these things are mentioned in this trailer, a process called active measures. This is ideological subversion, or could be called psychological warfare. And again, this is pointed out in this trailer, and the trailer itself has the voice of Yuri explaining this, saying, look, you are at war, you are under attack, this is something that's going on and you have to admit it. They even include the 4 phases of demoralization in this video, which is very bold, especially as Yuri Bezmenov's lectures have on more than one occasion been removed from YouTube. I don't know why. He's talking about spy games during the Cold War, so I mean, what on earth could be the reason for taking that down? But I suppose that if we're in the process of being subverted and you're helping to do the subversion, maybe you wouldn't want this to be public knowledge.
So again, the crowd who want their politics out of games really love Call of Duty featuring a guy talking about how the scary Soviets really undermine the West. Also, I love how Sargon here doesn't think the US used psychological warfare. We are talking about the same country that put LSD in its own civilians' water supplies to test the effects. We are talking about the same country that set up Guantanamo Bay, Abu Ghraib. We're talking about the same country that dropped more bombs on North Vietnam than the whole bombs dropped in World War II. I wonder what psychological impact that has on people. But again, you see the far right don't mind when the far right get a voice in these video games. So you didn't think Call of Duty could get any worse, but then they go on to feature Ronald Reagan in their newest trailer. Treyarch have said themselves that the way they decided to portray Reagan was based on people who worked in his government and people who personally knew him. So I'm sure we will get a nice balanced portrayal of Reagan. And despite Reagan being remembered very fondly by conservatives, I think it's hard to argue that he is actually one of the worst American presidents. I do really appreciate all the memes, you know, press F to sell weapons to Iran, press F to fund death squads in Nicaragua, press F to ignore the AIDS crisis. Reagan was an awful guy, and I'll tell you for a fact, the only reason Reagan didn't get properly charged for Iran-Contra when he left office is because his Alzheimer's was too bad. Literally, the special prosecutor who was assigned to that went to meet Reagan and wanted to prosecute him, but when he spoke to him, he realized this guy was too far gone with his brain disease and he actually couldn't remember anything about Iran-Contra. And Iran-Contra essentially ushered in the age of fake news as well, because Oliver North gave his testimony to Congress, and then Ollie Mania swept the country, where loads of people supported a rogue agent who constructed the deal where he would illegally sell weapons to Iran and then use that money to fund fascist death squads. So Ronald Reagan wasn't only an awful president, he was awful for the culture of the United States, and there is a direct line from Reagan to Trump. Essentially, he is the proto-Trump. So, crushing unions, funding fascist death squads, invading multiple countries, ramping up the Cold War and putting the world on the brink of nuclear war. What a great guy. So not political to put him in a video game and have his whole depiction really influenced by people who were friends with him. But the Quarter Pounder just thinks we're all hysterical lefties for pointing this out. Ronald Reagan is the president, and whether you like it or not, it's not political to put him in a game and have you work for the CIA under Ronald Reagan and do his bidding. That's not political. But having a transgender character in The Last of Us is the most political thing that's ever been done and is proof of leftist infiltration of media in general. So let's take a look at the Quarter Pounder's video quick.
What's hilarious to me is Ronald Reagan. That's making people feel some feelings hilariously. Now, I wasn't interested in politics during the Reagan era. I don't care. This video isn't about whether or not Ronald Reagan was a good president or not. All presidents have their goods and their bads, most of them bad. But the reaction to it is what has been kind of hilarious. Everyone seems to really like the reveal. Very impressive, Ronald Reagan. Hopefully he has more screen time than just a couple scenes. I wonder if he's going to be in the zombies version. But journalists are very upset about it, and we're going to take a look at some of that. How the folks over on Reset Era, they're probably having a total normal one. I just grabbed a couple. There's a couple. Why put Reagan in the game unless we're going to end him? Reagan really soured the trailer for me. Blue Monday in the new 80s song trailer, game looks hot. Two factors though. F Reagan. Can we end Reagan? Ronnie Reagan gonna make that a lol nope for me. I wonder how many will claim the game to be historically accurate. I also wonder, if I should play the avatar of this game as a massive American circle jerk story about how America and Reagan saved the world. No actual gamers care about this because, it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's just a piece of the puzzle. The way Call of Duty works is they'll take a conflict as a theme, as a kind of an area, but it's not exactly precisely historically accurate. They'll often take specific missions and things like that. It's adjacent, right? But people love it. And you see all sorts of people. Call of Duty, let me end Reagan in the face. Call of Duty, War on Drugs with Reagan Operator DLC. A lot of people having a normal one about Reagan in the game. Yuri Bezmenov is he's a guy you should watch. Learn. Educate yourself.
I think what I hate most about TheQuartering is that he tries to stay above it, and his videos are so low effort where he doesn't actually say anything much, but then sometimes you can really get his real politics through that. So he's saying, Reagan, he might be good, he might be bad, all presidents are good and bad. But the funny thing is the hysterical overreaction, and COD is essentially has a political background, but it doesn't have a political message. And some of you may have watched my video about how Call of Duty acts as propaganda for the CIA. Now, you may not see Call of Duty as political if you agree with its status quo political message. So what do I mean by that? So if you show people a game where the US military is good, where the CIA is good, where Arabs, where Russians, where Vietnamese are the bad guys, of course you're not going to see much political with Call of Duty. But of course, if you aren't any of those things, if you don't support the US, you are going to see how Call of Duty is one of the most political series. Of course, it's a series talking specifically about war, whether historical or contemporary. It's obviously pushing a message. So in my video, I focus on the Modern Warfare games, and I talked about how they really prop up this neocon worldview. They really prop up a lot of things about the US military. Some are better than others. So Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 I think is pretty disgusting in its representation of Arab people, whereas Modern Warfare 2 is a bit better in showing how, the US often lie to really further an agenda and create these massive wars. That's not a bad message at all. But then the Black Ops games have you doing the work of the CIA and basically make anyone who's not American an evil character. So I talked about the Vietnam War. So in the Vietnam War, there are no Vietnamese on your side. So there's no South Vietnamese soldiers, there's no South Korean soldiers, there's no Australian soldiers. It's just the Americans fighting the evil Vietnamese communists who are just depicted as completely bloodthirsty and insane. So take the scene, which is obviously a rip-off of The Deer Hunter, where you're being tortured in an underground bunker, complete with a Russian guy overseeing it all, treating these prisoners awfully and brutally beating one in front of the player. Now, Oliver Stone, himself a Vietnam veteran, in his recent autobiography, said The Deer Hunter is essentially just propaganda. It's wildly inaccurate, especially this depiction of US servicemen being made to play Russian roulette constantly. Now, a lot of the US prisoners weren't exactly treated nicely. You can get that from their testimony, but of course it plays into this narrative when you only show one side. So Call of Duty choosing to depict a really, really brutal imperialist war where the US committed just untold war crimes, a completely unjustifiable war, in a certain way, in a Ronald Reagan way, you could say, where it was a noble cause. The US might have got it wrong when they were fighting it, but, the reasons behind it were totally sound. But how is that not insanely political? I guess if you're completely indoctrinated in US propaganda, you see that as the status quo, and that is the middle ground, because it's not promoting a far-right message, in your opinion, or a far-left message. It's just history. But pull back the curtain a little bit and you'll see that series like this game, especially ones that tell historical stories, often are the most political. So in the new COD game, it seems that you were fighting in Vietnam to start with. You were probably going to be taken across the Cold War. It's set in the 80s, so think about all the various places you can go. Nicaragua, with the Contras, that may feature. War on drugs is bound to feature. The Caribbean, the Middle East, maybe Lebanon, maybe other places, like Afghanistan with the Soviet Union, although they already did that. Now, if you're doing all of that to unveil some cultural Marxist conspiracy, and you're doing the work of Ronald Reagan, but he's being presented in a very neutral, apolitical way, that is inherently political, and of course is quite offensive to people that Ronald Reagan hurt. Think of all the people who died from AIDS and think of how he handled that stuff. And I'd have a lot more respect for chuds like TheQuartering and Sargon if they were consistent. If they saw this stuff and were like, yeah, I might agree with Ronald Reagan, I might agree with Yuri, but I said I didn't want politics in games, or I didn't want overt politics in games, so Call of Duty, what are you doing? Please take this out. Instead, it's yay, cultural Marxist conspiracy theorists and really hard right American president who did awful things. Promoting them is good, and that's not political at all. But let me make a million videos on The Last of Us Part 2 because you play as Ellie and she's in a gay relationship, and you also play as Abby and one of your friends is Lev, who is transgender, because that is really political. Or let me make loads of videos that they recast Batwoman as a black bisexual woman. So to sum up the worldview of people who constantly cry about video games having political messages, they do not see anything wrong with promoting the CIA. They do not see anything wrong with promoting the Vietnam War as a good thing. They do not see anything wrong with propping up the US military-industrial complex. They do not see anything wrong with positive depictions of former right-wing US presidents. They don't see anything wrong of a trailer promoting a guy who's been widely debunked as a far-right conspiracy theorist. They have no problem with war games essentially rewriting history to the benefit of the US, but they have massive problems with transgender representation, they have massive problems with gay representation, they have massive problems with minority representation, they have massive problems with more thoughtful stories about war, you know, the Metal Gear Solid games, things like Peace Walker. So again, promoting neoconservative politics isn't political, but promoting diversity is extremely radical and political. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, please like the video, maybe subscribe to the channel. Check out my social media at The Kavernacle on Twitter and Instagram. Please check out my Reddit r/TheKavernacle for my subreddit. Please come join that. u/Tommy Cahill for my personal Reddit. Also check out my Patreon. Anything you can give me really helps, but don't feel obliged to. Check out my writing, so my Medium and WordPress. Also, like I said at the start, I started my podcast on Spotify at the moment, hopefully Apple Podcasts soon, and it's me and my girlfriend talking about being raised Catholic and how essentially we broke away from that religion. So if you made it this far, thank you for watching.